Welcome to the ColivingCircle podcast. I'm your host, Paul Burke. ColivingCircle, the best place to find your next co-living space. I am here with Kalen Hayman, who lives at Haven in Venice. It's a co-living space. And he is in Vancouver, quarantined. I am here in Los Angeles. Welcome to the show, Kalen.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks for having me. And I spent a good 8 months in Haven Coliving, Los Angeles, Venice Beach, actually. And they had launched their doors last March. And I was first, I'd say, 100 members of their community. And it was life-changing, to be quite honest. I'll let you ask the questions. I could go on very quickly, but you're the host today.
I mean, that's a great introduction. I feel like I could just let you run with it. But so I came across you because I was looking at podcasts about co-living, and you had a podcast, and it didn't sound like a lot of other podcasts I had heard before. And I think you sort of got into some topics that go beyond like renting a room. And sort of you mentioned it, how co-living actually like changed your life for the better. So I definitely want to get that into that stuff. But first, tell us about yourself a little bit.
Sure. So I got a background in media production. I'm a trade professional in photography and video production. So I've been shooting for a long time. Got my start in Los Angeles in high school, shooting the music industry in Hollywood when I was like 16, so it was still film at that time. I'm 38 today, and so I've bounced around from Toronto, LA, San Francisco, Vancouver, and again. Storytelling is a passion of mine. I love interpersonal storytelling, helping people tell their stories better, whether it's brands or personal brand development. I've worked with celebrities and record labels, and from Red Bull to Jim Beam to Justin Bieber. My brother's a director. I've done some projects with him. And then most recently, the co-living industry has been my latest passion. This was before the outbreak. So I did relocate back up to Vancouver. That's kind of my career and life in a nutshell. Health and fitness and wellness become a priority of mine in my 30s. My whole goal as a freelance entrepreneur was really to have more energy, to be more productive, to earn a better living and make more money. So different practices like spin was really exciting when I was still in Toronto. A lot of yoga when I was in Venice, because the wellness community there is strong and thriving. And now that I'm like in the great outdoors, I'm just trying to do everything outside.
Yeah, and you have the way cooler background than I have, so I'm a little bit jealous of that.
My lighting's better in the background than it is in the foreground. I apologize, but I had to pick something. So,
dude, that works. Okay, so that's a great introduction. So, when you were growing up and sort of being someone in film and production, and you've lived in a bunch of different places, what was sort of, I guess, like renting like? Would you consider yourself sort of like a digital nomad, to where you work a shoot for like 3 to 6 months in Toronto and then come back to LA? Like, what was it like before you found Haven?
So I've certainly lived on my own for quite a long time, over a decade. My first roommate probably would have been a girlfriend back when I was 22 and relocated to Vancouver at that time. Being freelance, I generally work from home unless I am shooting, and a lot of my video work is post-production editing, so working from home. Co-working became something new to me in Toronto about, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago, and that concept was before WeWork and before the corporate world, and more companies became familiar with that style of working in a community or a shared space, an affordable shared space. So I forget the question. Oh, it was more about travel and work. What was the question again?
I guess it was, co-living, I feel like, is really popular among digital nomads who, like yourself do freelance where they can work from home, and some, go to Bali for 3 months, or they're filming a contract in some place for 6 months.
Right.
Or did you mostly live somewhere like, okay, I'm only taking jobs here for like the next year, or I
Yeah,
guess,
I mean,
what was sort of the living situation
I
for the most
think
part?
work certainly was reliant on my clients, and for a long time it was in Toronto. And getting ahead as a freelancer became tougher and tougher as the economy shifted, as the digital world of content creation and the price points and what people were willing to spend on it shifted. Um, at the same time, the cost of living was increasing. So I had a really cool loft in the West End of Toronto, which was inspiring and allowed me to be more creative and such. But I think my passions for why I got in the industry shifted as well. The more corporate work I was doing, the less engaged I was with my career.
Mm.
And I had originally picked up the camera in Los Angeles, and I'd been dying to get back out there, but didn't have the affordability to relocate as you would with a new apartment and a car, uh, living expenses covered, for X amount of months until you get the ball rolling with new jobs and relationships. Um, so when I was researching affordable living in Los Angeles, which really wasn't, it still probably isn't really a thing,
Exactly.
uh, I did stumble upon Haven, which had listed their co-living community on apartment search platforms, apartment.com, or they even tested their response before they opened their community on Craigslist, before the owners even signed a lease on this new property, which is really interesting because I thought Craigslist was dead. I didn't think you would go there for credible information at all, but it also gave them a gauge and response to people interested in this concept. Now, the difference was, I mean, you can keep asking questions. I'll probably just keep talking, but
Yeah, go ahead.
they kept marketing their space and the design and their amenities versus what the catch was. And the catch was sleeping in a pod. Okay. And a lot of people aren't familiar with what this is. The bougie way to describe it is a Japanese style sleeping pod, but they're stacked units, essentially built out of wood and steel on top of each other in
Hmm.
small spaces to afford more living space. Not private bedrooms, rooms with pods. And this sounds scary and kind of frightening. And where's the rest of my bedroom and privacy? Because we're so used to privacy, apparently, even though now we live in a digital age where we're just giving up all our information for free. So the idea of privacy is shifted where people are more into affordable living and community living and living in community, where the benefits are health and wellness driven. To wake up and have a coffee and start your day, maybe off the conversation, or end the day, it's usually the busiest part of living in community, where you're sharing a meal or cooking in the kitchen and, being accountable for each other and ourselves through conversation and relations. And so the co-living industry has really opened my eyes and my spirit to being more optimistic about the future and how we go about living with each other.
Yeah, I think 10 years ago, if I had told you that a random stranger was going to pick you up from an app and take you to your restaurant, you'd be like, that's crazy. How do I know they're not this or that? Or if
Right.
I said, hey, instead of staying at a hotel, you're going to stay in some random stranger's private bedroom. And I feel like co-living is sort of the same, in which people are like, I'm sure you got asked all the time when you said where you're living in the setup, they're like, what is a pod? Like, what does that mean? What were some of the reactions you got when you told people sort of the style of it? Because it is not traditional, although it's gaining definitely much more acceptance, as has things like Airbnb and Uber, which previously sounded like ridiculous ideas.
Right. So the response, I mean, I remember my father came in town for a tour, and to show him that I was living in these small spaces, he's like, can you not just rent both pods and get the whole room and, have more privacy this way? My dad, I'm at his place now. He's got this sanctuary that's all this square footage, and I'm like used to sharing this amount of space with like dozens of people. So I think the younger demographic is a little more open-minded to this concept, but especially for traveling, to afford you to live 7 blocks from the ocean at $1,000 a month, no one's going to argue when you have this beautiful courtyard, or at Haven, a theater and co-working office, a gym and a yoga studio, and like beautiful designed interiors and shared spaces. So it's really what we're conditioned as a culture. And I had the most beautiful sleeps in a pod, so that's really how I would explain it. I mean, they were fearful in the marketing to exploit the pods, and I'm not 100% sure why. It could have been regards to new legislation and zoning laws. I'm not sure that all co-living has been deemed or zoned properly through government. So I think that there is some concern there in terms of businesses and what is legal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't think anything has been illegal. So I can't really speak on that side of things, but I went down a rabbit hole listening to Christine McDonald's podcast, the Co-Living Code Show, which I hadn't realized had been on for a couple of years. And she has her book and her app that's been released to help co-living communities operate. And then I'd opened my eyes to the industry at large, and mostly in Europe and overseas. And it just starting to take off here in North America.
Yeah, and I mean, I was exposed to it through. I started an app for finding roommates, and I was trying to raise money for the app. The app was basically like Tinder for finding roommates, and I was talking to venture capitalists for like a while. And I remember an article came out talking about shared housing startups are growing really fast. And I was like, that's crazy. We're not able to raise any money right now. So I remember looking at the list and seeing, Star City, Common, these big co-living spaces that have raised a ton of money. And that is really how I got introduced to it. And ever since then, I've been like, this is like really, really interesting and different than whatever. And, sort of what you just talked about, $1,000, you lived 7 blocks from the beach, and you had, can you just list off all those amenities one more time? Because for
Yeah.
$1,000 in LA, you're, if you get a private room, it's going to be, I mean, it's not going to be great. It's going to be a bad location. Like, you just can't do it. So, I mean, talk about again, just more like the experience and the amenities you got, because it's kind of unreal when you think about it.
Yeah. So for pod living, and they don't call it that, there is pod share, which is more on the hostel design concept side of things, but shared spaces. I mean, Haven is driven and marketed as a membership driven community. I think most shared and co-living communities are designed or branded as such. But for Haven, they had someone that worked in film and TV come in and design their interiors. So everything was very modern and slick and cool. And the concept of health and wellness and having access to a yoga studio, which was then more activated once member-driven programming was in place. Incentives for members to activate and teach within a community space also lent to the health and wellness. I did a weekly content class, which then became branded as a Creatives Anonymous when people started sharing more of their stories and vulnerabilities. My concept was to help people tell their stories better through content, but we had a private theater space with bean bags that you could, book out or share for watching movies and stuff. But usually, it brought people together in a quiet, safe space. The co-working space was great for digital nomads and people that worked from home, which was about 50% of that community, if not less. Some people were in school, some people were just relocating for work, others traveling. The gym was really cool, never really busy, maybe more so now that everyone's still there and at home and not working. But and then the rooftops were beautiful. Obviously in Venice Beach, there's a lot of sunshine. So to have that access. The kitchens were big and utilized for classes on occasion. The courtyard was generally where we would share meals throughout the day. So the design of that space was really nice. I mean, the list, literally goes on, but I would say the best part of community living was when programming was activated, and uh, month to month was the model for Haven. Um, some pod share is nightly and weekly and monthly, which I had to stay in a bit of a pinch, which is a whole other story I'll maybe share at the end of this conversation. Eddie Coliving in Los Angeles, they were all filled up, but they're opening up an entire building of units, which may have shared solo spaces and bedrooms. Treehouse was immaculate design and very member driven. They were a 12-month lease, which was interesting. But if I compare them to Soho House for co-living, they built their building from the ground up.
I like
And
that.
yeah, there you get your own bedroom and bathroom. And they said it was soundproof bedrooms. You share a kitchen, and then there's a larger building kitchen. But their price points were between $2,000 to $3,000 a month, which you would debate. I could get my own place for that, but the concept of living in community is really the biggest perk.
Yeah, I took a tour of Treehouse actually a couple weeks ago. One of my friends lives there, and it's like you said, it's immaculate. It really is like, when you're a kid and you think about like a tree house, it's sort of like that. It's an adult tree house. It's really amazing. um, you talked about community, and that's probably like one of the biggest value adds. Talk about sort of some of like if you formed any relationships there and just how that was sort of being around people like all the time. And how different was that?
Right. I'll start off by stating that Haven's first location, they're scheduled to open another one in April, which may be delayed because of the outbreak. I'm not sure. I know a lot of people are still scrambling and searching for places to live. But the Venice Beach location was 4 properties and 8 houses, 95 beds in total. Now, when you hear these numbers, you're like, how the hell is that possible? It's about 10 guys in the back and around 12 women in the front over, several floors. You're never surrounded by more than like a dozen people at any given time. And even that's really busy, usually in the evenings. So yes, in volume, there's a lot of people living there, but no one's on the same schedule. I would say month to month, when you move in with somebody, maybe the same weekend and such, you're going to form new relationships based off the experience of moving into community for the first time or moving to a new city at the same time. So you're going to form relationships just based off the timing of moving in. So there's a bondship there. I definitely had 2 or 3 bromances within the first few months of living in Haven, and whether we'd bond over work or health or creativity. Each month was new because people would come and go. I would say that 3 months is a good amount of time to live in any given shared community space, and some are designed to require just that, to reap the full benefits of living in community, and also for the community to fully embrace who you are as a member, so that the rotation isn't as high, and maybe it creates some sort of mental stability, perhaps. And on a business side, I would agree on. And there was discounts if you signed up at the beginning for a 6-month term. I think it was $100 off your rent, which most people end up staying, myself included, for 6 months or even longer. So there are benefits to staying longer. You just don't know at the beginning because you've never lived in community before, so you really can't compare it to anything. After 3 months, I ended up meeting someone who I got into a relationship with.
At Haven?
At Haven. And this will be the first time I speak about it publicly or whatever. It doesn't matter. Most people there knew about it. And then we actually had posting quite a bit of stuff together at the time. It's co-living's designed for singles right now. There are different businesses that will open up to family co-living, which I think is brilliant. I've seen things in Europe about all ages co-living, which I also think is brilliant. I have 2 parents who aren't together and live on their own, and I think could both benefit from living in community. They're not retired and don't need to live in a home. But I think there's certainly benefits for living with other people of different ages and backgrounds. So looking back, we broke up. I'm not in the relationship anymore. It lasted a few months. It was challenging. It was beautiful because of the space we were living in and the community we were surrounded by. But I think if you end up meeting somebody in a co-living environment, especially if it's co-ed, which most of them are, and you're going to stay in that relationship, it's probably best that you make plans as quickly as possible to move forward, whether together or otherwise. It's hyper living. So relationships are really put under the microscope and you're learning a lot about yourselves and each other. Another joke I would make is that you live in a house of mirrors. So all your vulnerabilities are going to be triggered and show up very quickly. So there's a huge learning curve on the relationship side of things that no one's anticipating. And anyways, so I ended up staying in Haven for just over, it was around 8 months. The breakup did help me move on and move out. It was relatively sudden in terms of the situation as to why I had to move into Podshare down the street fairly quickly. Again, that is more of like a hostel design space. They do nightlies, probably the cheapest in town, $50 a night. The rates went up as of March this year. They had monthlies that they were offering at $1,000 a month that went up to $1,400 a month for some of their higher demand locations, which may shift the industry. But now there's, a shortage of reservations across the travel and hotel industry because of the outbreak. So who knows where those checks and balances will come in.
Yeah, I definitely want to talk about the effect coronavirus is going to have on the industry, because I just got off the phone with someone who operates a space, and it's like you said, tons of cancellations. It's short term, I think there's the industry is definitely going to take a hit. Long term, I think, we probably both think it's going to rebound. One thing I definitely wanted to talk to you about was in your podcast, which we'll provide a link to, is you were very vulnerable about how it affected you personally. And you were very vulnerable about, depression and how it sort of, helped you like emotionally and mentally. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been battling with depression for over 2 decades, on and off medications, therapies, these types of things. Being independent and being a freelancer has created its own challenges. And working from home, of course, so self-isolation. So I actually wasn't anticipating the benefits of living in community from a mental health perspective, even though they did kind of brand themselves and market themselves to a health and wellness community. Living in community obviously takes you out of isolation, and being engaged with people who are like-minded, who are open and optimistic about who they are and what they want to do. I felt like people shared their vulnerabilities openly, almost daily. Like the types of conversations that would come about from just living in community weren't the ones I was expecting. But I think that there's like a trust of, it's almost like when you go to the bar, the bartender or a hairstylist to get your hair cut. It's like these people are friendly, they're providing a service, but they don't really know your world outside. Like your friends and family, there's not a connection. So it'd be hard for like a lot of that information to get back to anybody, so you kind of just spill your guts to these strangers and you don't really know why, and it just feels good. So I think there was definitely a bit of that in the process of living in a shared space. The class I taught, the creatives and not the content class, and then what certainly became this vulnerable safe space for people to share. Usually I started it from a creative and professional standpoint of how to make a living and how to tell your story better and promote yourself through digital content, these types of things. But I would definitely say living in the sunshine, living by the ocean, jumping in the water every day, sharing myself almost every day, these things, I'm still buzzing from the experience, to be quite honest. I mean, It's been almost 6 weeks that I moved out of Haven. And obviously the epidemic is going to make people, look at things differently. I know that the co-living community and industry is still operating. The founder of Outsite, the CEO, put out an interesting press release that stated that people's homes, whether they're short-term or not, to ask them to leave, and especially in a vulnerable state of the world, isn't the direction they want to go in. Obviously, people want to stay in business. These companies, CEO of Haven was on LinkedIn, put out a call for anyone looking to hire remote workers, and that he had, 100, I guess, clients or members of his own looking for work, talented bunch of young people. So how we go about living and doing things, it is an interesting time because it was a response to the affordable living crisis, the loneliness epidemic and these types of things. And now how we go about operating and benefiting from community in a safe way. I think a lot of people are just looking to see are you healthy? And if you're healthy, we're good, but you can't always see where the virus is going to hit or come from next. So I haven't heard of any cases in co-living communities yet, because I would imagine that they would drop like a bomb. One gets sick, they all get sick.
Right.
But I haven't heard that yet. And I think I watch, most people go on social media and watch people living at Haven, and they're having a great old time. Okay, so they're probably having more fun than anyone else who's isolated because they have each other. So I'm not sure their response to the taking precautions, but yeah, interesting times.
Yeah. Well, what else do you have about co-living that I haven't asked about?
I've been asked about.
Actually, I got one. Okay.
Yeah.
So we're talking about all the pros of co-living, right? What are some downsides to co-living? Because surely it can't all be positive, right? What are some potential downsides of co-living?
So I don't know if this was location specific. I know a lot of people, myself included, looking to get back to a place like Los Angeles, a highly sought after place in the world. Also challenging. Interesting about Haven is it was so self-contained, it became a bit of a bubble. Venice Beach is already a beach community, so it is its own bubble. Parking was an issue, and they discouraged people from bringing cars to their community because of the high volume and lack of access, and neighbors that were residents there before we moved in. So they've had issues around parking. Noise complaints wasn't really a big issue. It is quite a bit of outdoor space in this community, but I know it is an ongoing concern for businesses and their immediate locations. Neighbors have complained on and off again. Usually members don't have to deal with it. It's usually management that has to take in those responses. Another thing that I experienced was people that were relocating, loved the concept, but it may just be the times that we're in, that people looking to earn a better living and still being short of work. And even though they were living in affordable space, we're still short of cash because of opportunity and not knowing where to create that for themselves. One concept that I have not yet been able to put into practice, I still really believe in it, are people, and especially this day and age and how we move forward as a culture, is to support each other within our location or through digital. So what I mean by that is a booking platform for people to book your products or services, whether in person or through digital, but also interpersonal skill sets. So listen, we pay therapists just to listen to us, okay? Right now, Zoom and Skype and all these things are blowing up because we want human connection, okay? No one wants fucking isolation, excuse my French, but like, no one wants that. We could be introverts for so long. It's a beautiful thing to be introvert, but actually I need to be seen. I need to be heard. I need to be loved. All these things are very important. So from a community and co-living concept was, we had someone who was a brilliant masseuse. Okay. So $50, you get an hour of this person's time and you come out feeling like a new person. A lot of people were not good at cooking for themselves. Okay. So to be able to have someone, provide shopping or groceries or cooking once a week or for a meal or learn how to do something more healthy in practice is a beautiful thing. Reiki, tarot card readings, it could be anything. We actually all have interpersonal skill sets in addition to whatever we're developing on a professional side. It's all changing now. So earning a better living was definitely an issue that I saw in various co-living communities. And I think it's not just a co-living thing. I think it's culture. I think the world has constantly been changing. We're in a digital world and not everyone has been able to adapt.
Yeah. And so with people sort of, I guess, massage, this person does this, does this person do that? And especially with you being a creative, how much collaboration was there among people regarding, different projects, works, be whatever it is?
Yeah, I think that there was certainly more moral support. That's for sure. I think friendships came about in this environment more so. I think different communities are focused at different demographics. Haven started off as more mindful, spiritual community with a different community manager who helped curate and do tours with new members. That started becoming a little culty and creating its own challenges amongst new members. A new community manager had more experience dealing with volume, so they diversified the community because of their background and understanding, and just keeping the peace is number one. So I saw more friendships and moral support than I did career partnerships and such. My girlfriend at the time, we were going into business together, so there definitely was some overlap, similarities in that sense, and that was a beautiful thing. I saw some young creatives forming music projects and bands that they're putting together, and that was a beautiful thing to take witness. So I'm definitely more encouraged to find an older community in their 30s and 40s. They're a little more entrepreneurial, mindful, and that being more the direction of the community to thrive in, more so than just a younger. I love health and wellness, but Haven was going younger with this property. They were scheduled to open 2 more this year. So who knows if the demographics will shift based on the location of their properties. But it's interesting to watch what everyone's doing. Like you said, you mentioned Common, the collective in UK looks very entrepreneurial. Again, similar to a Soho House vibe, maybe costs a bit more. And then people like in Bali that are true digital nomads, I think create those co-working spaces to help teach and provide information as to develop themselves professionally as well.
Right. One question I have, because I'm somewhat introverted, I guess I would say I'm socially introverted. I need time away to recharge. I need time to read, to write, to process information. I cannot do that even if I'm with someone in the same room and they're not saying anything. Like, I just need that. Do you feel like co-living makes sense if you're introverted? Are you an introvert? Or do you feel like it's like if you get annoyed by people being around you, it's not, and not say I get annoyed by people, but it's just I know I need time for me to be introverted.
Yeah. So it was an interesting, co-living is kind of an experiment, a social experiment to begin with. House 1 being more the mindful house just by coincidence or how it started. It was definitely more homey. House 2, actually, there was 4 houses, and House 2 ended up becoming the introvert house. And I'm not sure if the community manager and the management ended up noticing that and then kind of curating it a little bit when they first met their new members. House 3 became the loud house, also to the point of fraternity. Okay, but also because we had more guys in the front house, so there was an imbalance of the sexes there. And then House 4 was just a mixed bag, and then they became the loud house. But there's certainly still space and room for introverts in a co-living community. I do believe that a lot of people would kind of retreat to their pods to have their quiet time. It is certainly challenging for anybody to create a peace of mind in co-living, because people are just looking to connect and shoot the shit, and all of a sudden you're in this conversation which could be beautiful, but there goes another hour of your time.
Yeah.
Okay, it's like catching up in a coffee shop when you had all this work to do, and then all of a sudden an hour and a half goes by, and people would start wearing headphones and earpods just to create boundaries for themselves while living in this space. So I wouldn't go as far as to say that there's no space for introverts. I think it's how you navigate it. My ex at the time would tell me that it was up to me to create time for myself, if and when I needed it, which was always challenging. But listen, co-living should be a transitional space. Okay, a lot of people do call it home. You can have the benefits of feeling at home or loved by a community and new friends, people that care about you. But it's like going to camp. Like once you leave camp, everyone's still there, unless you were bonding outside of camp. You may not create those same bonds. Like the bonds are based, like you have colleagues at work, you bond with them there. Rarely do they come to your personal life and integrate with you in that space. So it's really based off how a relationship starts and grows. Can you expect it to move forward? So I've definitely had a lot of support when I moved out. It was challenging times during a breakup, which one of us had to go because the living space was just too small. And I've left the country, because of what's happening. So there's definitely keeping tabs on people, and no matter where you are in the world, you'll know how to reach out. But I think just to have that experience has opened my eyes, and like you, believe in it to a point where I want to create a niche. I want to create a niche, and I've reaped the benefits personally and professionally. So yeah, no, introverts have their place in co-living, and we all have a lot to share and teach each other. So that's the best part about it.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Okay, last question before I let you take the floor and talk about whatever you want to talk about. So you lived there for 8 months, and now you're in Vancouver for who knows how long with this coronavirus thing. Would you be open, or would you be seeking to go to a different co-living establishment that fits more of what you need?
100%. And that was and still is my goal. Obviously, things have changed a bit. I'm with family here in Vancouver, so in a bit of a safe sanctuary with the cleanest air I've ever had. 100%. And even globally is what I'm looking at in Europe and different countries. Like I said, I think now that I've experienced one community or two and have toured various others, looking for ones that are a little more in my age range and a little more ahead with their careers, with a little more intention on the business and creative side of things. I love health and wellness. I definitely won't put anything past that. But I think, 3 months at a time is a brilliant space to live in a community. If you are going to school or you're on a contract and things are just working out for you, then extended living in those spaces, I think, is totally fine. I think it's important to show up for yourself in community. Don't just move in because it's cheap rent. Like, it really defeats the purpose. It's counterintuitive. Or at least give it a chance after a few weeks, like, to be open and engage with your community. Because if you're looking for cheap rent, like, you'll find your way out. If it's not about being introvert, it's just if you're not willing to learn more about yourself and share what you have with others, co-living's not for you. Obviously, you have to have an open mind, and it lends itself to singles for sure. But yeah, I'm excited for the industry. I hope the epidemic doesn't, last more than a few months. We have no idea. I do think it'll shift and shape culture in a new way. But I think we have a lot. The lessons learned in community should be shared with the world, and I think that's what you and I are helping do today.
Yeah, I think so. I would love to see like a Big Brother co-living edition. I think that would be sick. I don't know. Maybe Maybe we'll work on that. We'll see.
Yeah, that's
Okay. So tell people finally about your website and your work around co-living with photography, film, content in general. We both know this is a really exciting space, taking a bit of a hit right now, but hopefully it's going to come back. Tell us about the work you do there.
sure. So Co-Life Creations concept was to help community brands not only tell their story better, but to attract like-minded members, partners, and suppliers through digital media and strategy. So the work I did at Haven really helped shape my initiative with the rebrand with this business. Um, we did our first promotional lifestyle spot that really explained what our community was about, what it looked like, and the engagement within. A lot of businesses just show stock. Well, you should not be using stock photography to market your business, okay? Especially when it has to do with living space. They better be the real photos or I'm going to be really upset.
Yeah.
Which actually happened to me once in Toronto. There was a business that took stock images to promote, and then I did a tour. This guy's trying to sell me. It was like 2,000 deposit, 2,000 to move in, plus first, it was like $6,000 to move in. I'm like, to live with a couple of roommates in a condo-sized townhouse. I would go, buddy, this I could get way better. This is not. I don't know what you're doing here. So, being honest with your marketing is very important. I know it's tough when you're trying to sell something, especially when it's new. But I think a lot of communities are missing the human side and lifestyle of what it's like to live in a community. So you're going to see, like, look at our beautiful linens and our service and our high-speed internet and our kitchen. And these are great and they're definitely selling points. But, like, at the end of the day, I want to know who's living there. And a lot of people, before, when they would apply, either take in person or take a virtual tour, is go to the Instagram. And then they'd go on the stories and see who's sharing and who's engaging and who are these people. Who am I going to connect with? Will I connect with any of these people? So I believe it's Outside that has global membership program, and yeah, I'll share some of their concepts that they have. It's like a membership before you move in. You can, it just gives you like discounts and stuff like that. So part of the concept I had around community engagement and marketing was to sell the services of members that live within these communities, because I want a piece of Haven even if I'm put on a wait list. Okay, so the design and concept of this community looks fantastic, but they're booked up right now, and a lot of them do book up, and that wait list can last months at a time. So I like the idea of having a consultation or having a yoga session or coming in for a class or being able to chat with a member of the community, even if I can't get in or I'm waiting. I want a piece of that community brand. So Outside has an interesting, membership, the black card for flexible professionals at 20. This is Outside again. Features include flexible access, unlock members only spaces, right? So they have some companies have member only properties that you can have access if you pay extra. Exclusive rates and deals stays up to 40%. Rewards earn credit towards future stays, so that's cool. Partner perks, deals from travel, productivity, and lifestyle brands. So third-party brands, I see a huge opportunity for, appliances or food and beverage products, soaps and daily essentials for community living or any household items. I see a lot of opportunity, especially on the creative and marketing side of things. We have at Haven, 100 people live in there. A percentage, there was some influencers, okay, people that worked in content. So to engage with brands, because some of these businesses are paying for like kitchen supplies and appliances, of course. You don't really have to move in with much, but these businesses are going out of their ways to supply things like coffee or cooking oil, and these get used up quickly. Cinnamon, couldn't find cinnamon on the shelves at Haven. Well, you eat them up. So I
Bring
see a
your
lot
cinnamon, man.
That's right, and bring some spices. Expert network. So this is another one that Outside's offering that I fully believe in for all community brands. Advice from experts from marketing to nutrition, I would believe from other members that were part of this program. So this kind of concept from a marketing standpoint, I think is brilliant. I mean, we did virtual tours, we did membership profiles through video, which was funny because my template was from Treehouse, had a campaign, a commercial about 4 members who moved into community but were experiencing some life or business trauma, but returning back home, they were saved by their friends and network of support of the people they lived with. So I did a couple spots at Haven with their members and took it from a more, because when you're talking about health and wellness, you're talking about mental health as well. And people don't just get into health because they're already healthy. They want to sustain or had previous traumas in their life, which those were stories that I would share in these member profiles. Eventually, the owners and their network stated that this is starting to look more like a rehab through the content that you're producing, Kalen, and we need to lighten up the mood a little bit. I would always show 2 sides of the coin, but some people also dealt with previous traumas of, personal body image issues or depression and these types of things. And living in community and health and wellness, these things would help turn that. But then the other 2 spots I did were about 2 best friends meeting each other and planning to move out as roommates, or someone just progressing with their professional development by teaching classes and excelling within their network. So yeah, communicating your intentions as a community brand and also sharing what the lifestyle looks and feels like, but also offering, I think this is the final step, services, products and services from members of your community, just off your website, especially for people who are on a wait list. I want to engage. I want to know who's there. Okay. Social media is huge, but how you go about it is very important. Don't just glamorize it. Okay. Tell me who these people are. What do you have to offer? Aside from affordable living, I think is huge. And I think it'll help shift, especially the times that we're in today, where we're now in isolation.
Yeah. I really like those insights sort of into other ways co-living can grow, and then there's definitely a ton of business opportunities that are really exciting there. Some that, like, my mind is just like the wheels are turning.
Yeah, we've only just met, so there's more we could talk about.
I know. It just made me aware because, I've seen this much of it and I know this much, but as you talk, I like what I know about it keeps being like, oh, there's a possibility here. Like there's all these different things that are possible with co-living that just build like better community, help people run better businesses, be more creative, all that sort of stuff.
Good. Hopefully you and I start a new business after this conversation.
Hey, I've been known to do stuff like that.
Okay.
So it's very possible.
Grow off
Okay.
what we existed we have. Yeah. Go ahead.
Sorry to cut you off. So we've been about 50 minutes. So this is awesome. I know I've learned a ton, and whoever's listening will learn a ton. Do you have any closing remarks about co-living that you want to offer people who have listened to this entire thing?
I just really believe it. It's like I said, it's changed my life for the better. A lot of hard lessons are as well, but I mean, if you're looking for affordable living, if you're looking to improve your health, your professional development, co-living, even the travel and relocate. Okay, there's so many benefits. A lot of people are concerned about giving up their privacy. Okay, if you're already happy, just it's fine. We're not speaking to you. But if you're looking for a shift or an answer or a change, I definitely recommend giving co-living an opportunity. Hopefully, it's coming to a city near you. I would definitely keep your finger on the pulse, especially when things start to shift. But even though listen, all bets are off now. Okay, the virus has shifted culture, humanity. Who knows how long it's going to last to recover? And I think when we come to the other side, looking for alternative ways of living and working, and hopefully co-living will continue to be a safe space for that. And I think being on our own, people could die. Okay, people could die just from being on loneliness, depression. They're out of work. Suicide rates go up when people are out of work. Great Depression, all these types of things. I hate to dampen the mood, but that's what I'm talking about. Is there's so many benefits from community living that I could just go on. So I'm definitely an advocate, and I really appreciate you reaching out to me, Paul. And I love that you've got your finger on the pulse and that you've carved a niche out for yourself even before, co-living was really branded only like 2014 in Europe. And then here in North America, we only known it last year or two. So I know you've been in the space, and I love that you've already had a business in the space, and I'm excited to see where it goes.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, thanks so much for coming on, man. Just from a cold email, I appreciate that. We're gonna include show notes to your Instagram, your website. If you are in the co-living space and you need any sort of content media, Kalen is your guy. I feel like there are so many good stories to be told about co-living, and we're just like there. There's just so much opportunity there. So yeah, thanks for coming on, man. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Let's keep the conversation going and growing.
All right, let's do it.